Okay, good evening, everyone. I would like to call tonight's regular council meeting to order. And as we begin tonight, I do wish to acknowledge that we are meeting on the territories of the Sauk Nation. And I do wish to acknowledge both their government as well as their longstanding connection to the lands and seas. And I just have a few announcements to make today. A few things is that we do have a new T-coil system installed. So for those that are hard of hearing, it's technology that will direct feed via Bluetooth into a hearing aid device, and it's also available down in our main reception. And this, as well as the carpeting, is all received due to a grant that we received from the Rick Hansen Foundation. The technology also means that the microphones are extra sensitive, so any side conversations that are held will be picked up through the feed, so just keep that in mind. And also the streaming of our webcasting is also now been transferred to YouTube. So it's not new, or we've been webcasting for a long time. It's just another platform for folks to be able to view us on. And this is due to a software update. And finally, I just wish to, on behalf of council, I wish to acknowledge and thank Mr. Don Schaefer. This is going to be Don's last week with us and his last meeting at council. So I just formally and publicly wish to thank you for all of your work with us these past 6 months. We're very grateful for everything that you've done. We are excited to have our new incoming CAO join us on July 2nd and understand that Ms. Machada will cover off the weekend as our acting CAO, so thank you for that as well. But truly, we're going to miss you, and we wish you the very best and hope that you'll visit us some point again. So thank you very much. Okay, so on that note, council, we are sitting in quorum, so we're good to go. I just look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda as it's presented, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. First up, we have adoption of meeting minutes from both our June 10th regular council meeting. Can these be done together? As well as our committee of the whole meeting minutes of June the 17th. So looking for council to adopt those moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Any questions or corrections?
Yeah, I have a couple. Well, you know, I just like to see things done by the book. On page 19, item 8.2, Farrell Estates. There's no E at the end of Farrell. That's the feminine spelling of Farrell. But, okay, get that straight. On public comments on page 20, number 4, we have Erin Topelko, and in fact, her name is Topelko, Topelko. And, I have some thoughts around the amount of discussion that this council has around certain issues, making it into the minutes. And there were a couple of minute items here which I know had a much more fulsome discussion. And I'm not quite sure how to approach this, whether it's best for me to submit in writing points that I felt were overlooked in the minutes, or how could I play that?
Okay. Some guidance from staff, please.
Yeah, those issues would need to be raised now, and then those ideas adopted with the minutes.
Okay, so I would raise them then now, if you may, Councillor Bateman, because council will then look to adopt the meeting minutes tonight as amended or as circulated and the like. So in order for any points, then this would be the time then for council to incorporate those.
Okay.
But can you let us know which date and which item? Okay.
Yeah, so Yes, June 24th, the public survey on the subject of cannabis production in Souk is only closing today. Hence, we chose not to dive deep to a degree about that subject on the night of June 10th. And I'll leave it at that for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to capture that. Hence,
Yeah.
council knowing the public survey was live too.
Because we did take some heat in an editorial in the Souk News Mirror that, yeah. So I think it's important to have these points listed. Thank you.
Okay. I'm adding to that a bullet. I've made the corrections here that hence council knowing the public survey was live to June 24th, 19, determined it best to consider public input and at an upcoming meeting. Public input and at an upcoming meeting. Upcoming to guide council decision. Guide. At an upcoming meeting. Okay. So we've moved and seconded that. So in this case, do we need to call for an amendment that the minutes be adopted as amended? So if you want to make that motion, Councillor Bateman, that an amendment be made that the minutes be adopted as amended.
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a seconder for that amendment by Councillor Beddoes? So I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And now on the motion as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Oh, Ms. Machado?
Sorry, can I just take a moment to remind, and I don't think we've done this yet, but just to let the public know that given that we no longer ask for speakers' addresses, we do have a form at the desk, so if you come up to speak, we would appreciate if you would write down your name and the issue that you're speaking to so that we can ensure the spellings are correct in the minutes.
Yes.
Thank you.
That helps, but we don't require address. We just like to know the municipality that you reside in. But the spelling helps, then we got that right. Okay, thank you very much for that. So moving along then, is we do have recommendations here from our June 17th Committee of the Whole meeting. So in this case, we can look to go through these one at a time, and then if there's any other reflection or thoughts that councillors wish to make, we can look at doing them as we go through. So we'll start with the first one then, and that is that council directs staff to amend the proposed memorial plaque contribution policy as follows. Renewals, allow existing memorial plaques to remain in place for a 10-year period commencing July 2019 upon adoption of policy at no cost for current sponsors. Do we have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any discussion there? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. The next is that council directs staff to amend the proposed memorial plaque contribution policy as follows. Renewals, option to renew for another 10 years with fees defined at time of renewal. Is there a mover for that? Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any discussion there? Yeah?
So this question of the right of first refusal, I guess that is effectively stated in the option
Microphone?
to renew. Yeah. The right of first refusal,
Yeah, I think
Is-
that was,
unsaid but implicit in option to renew. Okay.
is that correct? From a SAP, okay, that's correct. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. That council directs staff to amend the proposed memorial plaque contribution policy as follows. That all existing and new benches allow for a maximum of 5 plaques. Current and future sponsors to be informed that multiple plaques may be affixed to benches. Mover?
I have problems with it, but
Okay, is there,
move it, I
if you want to move it for discussion, Councillor
it for
St.
discussion.
Councillor Beddoes, and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre for discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I have a lot of problems with this. We
people right now still believe that if they buy a bench for $2,000, they're buying that bench. And now we're going to look into the maybe have 5 different plaques on there. So we're reselling that bench again and again and again. And I'm very much opposed to that. I liken it to at the cemetery, which I put a lot of volunteer hours there, and you have a little plot for someone to put ashes, and then we put 4 other people's ashes on that spot. It just opens up a whole lot of problems if, for instance, I have Uncle Bob down there on a bench with his name on it, and then all of a sudden there's some other person from the community that Uncle Bob hated side by side. I just think it's, you know, we just sell the bench once, and they have an option to renew it in 10 years, which I'm not 100% in favor of, but it's not worth making a deal of. But I really do have a problem with selling this thing over and over again, up to 5 times. I mean, it makes us look like we're money grabbing, and the idea is that we have, our policies are to just pay the expenses. We're not out to make money off of people. And I just think it just sends the wrong message. And at the same time, we've already okayed putting that big block, whatever it's going to be, down there, the art piece, that we have people will be putting their loved ones or what their dedications. And for me, I'd rather go down there and have a look at that and read of all those dedications, because I don't go to every bench on that spit. So I'd rather see us dedicate loved ones to that than I would to the benches. But I was outvoted the other night. That's okay. That's the way it works. But selling it 5 times is just out of the question. I will vote against it tonight.
Yeah, no, and I totally hear you on that. I think part of it was that due to the elements, that if a bench in its location lasts only 5 years, and then it's determined that that is not a sustainable location for that, but then where does the plaque go? So then, is it automatically then, do we put it on the memorial wall when it, or the sculpture when it exists, or does it join another bench? And then some want to always remain on a bench forever, so then could they have company?
That's where I have the problems.
Yeah.
You know, and again, the money issue bothers me a lot. And I just think we're making life very difficult for our staff that have to deal with these issues. And it's a very, very touchy issue when you're dealing with people's loved ones on memorials.
Yeah, no, it's totally true.
I think we should revisit this and not pass this portion of it. I don't mind, I can live with the rest of it. I'm not 100% happy with it. But this portion, I just think we're open for a lot of criticism from the community. And wait till somebody that's had, you know, Aunt Ethel's plaque down there finds somebody beside her. Do we go to them and saying, oh boy, we're going to put so-and-so. Oh no, he was an awful person in the community. Just stay away from it. You know, they buy the bench, $2,000, I believe that's the figure. They think it's theirs. They don't realize that it's only for 10 years. We understand that. But they're putting $2,000 out, and gee, you know, took another $2,000 from somebody else. I disagree.
No, that's fair. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I also earmarked this particular recommendation, and I was wondering whether we needed to re-examine the fee structure. So if indeed you go on a bench with multiple plaques, if you sign off and make that agreement, then the costs would be reflected accordingly. That might just get a little too complicated. So it might be simpler to just simply 1 plaque per bench.
I guess the other thing too is that we had determined that we're not going to be limiting the amount of commemorative items there. Like there's been talk later about adding picnic tables in places. Like some of it was if you max out the number, then that puts, you know, there's only so many in, right? And no one else. But in this case, looking at other commemorative items then, and giving staff the ability to move them as needed for storm events would allow some flexibility. And I think having, you know, hopefully we'll eventually have the sculpture in place, because I think that's a big part, is that there's nothing there right now. So that's why the bench, in the absence of anything, it's the only option, right? Councillor St. Pierre?
In terms of commemorative items, I understand there's also a stairway, 100 steps or so, and it had been suggested at one point by myself that we could potentially have, a plaque per step, which would actually, be discrete items, but you could actually have up to 100 commemorative plaques. And then whenever users were actually going up and down these steps, you could actually see them. I don't know if the area is high enough usage compared to Whiff and Spit. Obviously, Whiff and Spit is well-known and, well-traveled, and that's going to be a prime location for this sort of thing. Having said that, we don't exactly know what's going to be happening in the next, decade or so. 10 years might be a long time for Whiff and Spit to stay above water. So, they might prefer to have stairs. I don't know.
I guess another question would be that should we run into a problem where there are folks that would really like a bench or a commemorative item of sort, and there's absolutely nowhere else to put them, then staff can bring that to council and say, look, we have the sculpture in place, the benches are still very popular, what can we do? It can be re-examined then, and then there may be some people that want to be on a bench together out of choice, and that's, like, if a family wants to do that for a reason, to have two loved ones together, should be allowed to do that, right? Like, I don't want to just prescribe something that, no, you can't share when people are wanting to. I think that's important. But I think if we run into this challenge, we can have staff bring it to us and say, okay, we've hit a glitch here and we can amend it. And so we can just leave this. Ms. Machada?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind council, this was just direction to staff, and council will still have an opportunity when the actual policy comes back for consideration to make further changes.
Okay, so I think at this point, we're not comfortable with this particular one. And we'll call the question on it, but maybe we can we'll move forward with then. But I'll call the question because we moved it. So all those in favor of this one? Opposed? So we're all opposed, so that part is defeated then. We'll take that out. So the other part is that council directs staff to amend the proposed memorial plaque contribution policy as follows: a wait list to be on a first-come, first-served basis. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Any discussion there? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Replacement. The district reserves the right to move plaques to alternate locations should commemorative item no longer be sustainable in the current location. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Discussion there? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And that replacement, that damaged commemorative items be replaced at the district's cost if operationally feasible. Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor Bateman. And for the public that's here tonight, that would be more if someone contributed a one-time $60,000 item that got taken away. We may not have the resources to replace that type of a one-off structure, but a bench and others would be done without a problem. Okay, so all those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. The other is that council directs staff to examine the feasibility of using the stone wall at Ed McGregor Park for memorial plaques. I'll move by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Discussion there, and this would be at the family's choice. Like, we don't just put them there. That there are some that are specific to locations, but also specific to Ed McGregor, and may want something there. So that's just up to whomever to make that call, but it would be an option that would be open that isn't open now. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And lastly, that council directs staff to draft an operational procedure that examines possible locations for commemorative items on Whiff and Spit. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Discussion, Councillor St. Pierre, then Beddoes.
Just following up on my previous thought, I think it might be nice to ask staff also to look at possible alternatives for commemorative items, just playground equipment, staircases, whatever the community needs, where people in the community are going to see it. There should be opportunities maybe for us to help the community and achieve the needs of families in this way.
So should we add commemorative items on Whiff and Spit and other public parks?
Something like that, something that allows a little bit more of a mandate there in terms of opening up.
Okay, so an amendment then, Councillor St. Pierre, is to add and other public parks. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Bateman is seconding that. So on the amendment specifically, that's to add in and other public parks. Is there any discussion there? Councillor Bateman.
Well, I was thinking what Councillor St. Pierre was saying was a range of commemorative items. You know, not just our benches, and there are many kinds of commemorative items. So I think we've amended this to say other public parks, but the key point is other types of commemorative items. A wider range of commemorative items.
Okay.
And have that in some sort of
Okay, so
schedule
that's,
with pricing.
so that's another amendment
That
to
would
add
be,
that
I'm
in.
afraid.
So that's an amendment to the amendment. So is there a seconder for that amendment? Moved by Councillor St. Pierre. So this is to look at items. So I'll call the question on the amending amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So now on the amended amendment. Is there anything? We've added the range of items and the locations. Anything there? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So now we have an amended main motion. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I need staff to explain to me exactly, the council directs staff to draft an operational procedure. Tell me what that would look like, please, because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Through to your worship to Councillor Beddoes, the operational procedure are things like the application form and the day-to-day. So the application form would have the cost for the commemorative item or the memorial plaque, and it would say what wording would be on that plaque, et cetera. So that form is part of that operational procedure, as well as, and I don't have my notes in front of me. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, just an operational procedure is a set of guidelines that will guide staff through the process of taking somebody through the process of buying a commemorative item. So,
Yeah, I understand about procedures, and you have to have a written procedure. That's what staff needs. But to examine possible locations, you need a written procedure for staff to examine possible locations, or is this the public coming to you and saying, I want to put the statue of Uncle Bob on this location, and you need something to guide you to that, or?
no, I agree with you. I think there's two separate motions there. This to draft operational procedures for commemorative items, period, and that council directs staff to examine possible locations for a wider range of commemorative items.
Okay,
on Within Spain and
then
other
I'd be
parks.
happier with that, because I couldn't understand this procedure on looking for spots.
Okay, so then I'll entertain a motion to sever the amended resolution by Councillor Beddoes and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. So we're severing the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. So they're severed and they're amended. So we'll do the first one then, and that is that council directs staff to draft operational procedures for commemorative items. I'll call the question on that. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. And now that council directs staff to examine possible locations for a wider range of commemorative items on Whiffspit and other public parks. Been severed. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Done. Thank
Yay.
you very much. Okay, excellent. So next up, we have our delegation section, and I would like to welcome Mr. Gord Horth for a CREST update. And we have 5 minutes allocated for you this evening, and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Mayor Tate and Council. I just have a brief presentation on just sort of our project to date, and open to any questions you might have at the end or at any time. So just fire up this presentation. So basically, when we started the project in 2016, this is what the system looked like, and it currently is in play. Your fire department and your police department out this way, Chief Mount still is using the existing system. We had 10 transmit sites. You can see you folks are down at the bottom to the west. You primarily use one transmission site on Mount McGuire for the coverage. You do need more, and we're trying to do that. So our plan was to have about 32, 33 sites operational by the end of this year. I think that we won't quite get there, particularly out this way. We will add some sites in between Mount McGuire and into the West Shore, but it is challenging getting sites beyond to give you guys some coverage on the far end of town out towards Shirley. We have been working quite closely with Area Director Mike Hicks, Western Forest Products, and a cell phone company to look at possible sites out in that way. We have some leads that we're actively working on, but I have to say at this point, we don't have any certainty that we will get them. And even once we get them, there's a community engagement process that takes time in terms of to talk to people about what they like or they don't like and what their worries are. So we've gone through that numerous times, but we aren't at that stage for out this way yet. So just so that you're aware of that. So as you may know, CREST is owned by you folks. It's a co-op basically, and you're a shareholder. They're 20 equal shareholders, the 13 municipalities. The CRD has 3 shares for each electoral area, so out towards the Gulf Islands and one out here in terms of one to Fuca. Small technical staff, about 5 engineers and technicians that are available on 24/7, 365 days a year, and often they're called upon to respond to challenges if your police or your fire needs some help, or the ambulance having comms problems. We're there to respond. I like to think that we do a great job, but that's a bit self-serving. So. But we did start with 36 agencies in 2003 when CREST was operational, and we have 50 agencies that use the service now. So it is growing. Under the new system, we have more capacity. We'll improve coverage, particularly if we can get a site to the west of you folks. We have definitely more capacity, about 30% more capacity, and the new technology is all digital, so we get some better audio clarity as well. And the system that we chose is the same as ECOMS, which serves the lower mainland. We have a link between the 2 sites, so in the event that their master site went down, we could back them up and vice versa. So there's some redundancy, additional redundancy in the system, which we think is good. Although even the old system, which is 17 years old, worked quite well in the windstorm. We didn't lose a single site, which was quite remarkable. The traffic was increased, so we had longer queues and waiting times in some instances, particularly in the Gulf Islands. But I think overall it served us quite well, but the new system will do an even better job. That's one of our new sites we built in Esquimalt, High Rock Park. That's our gear at the top of that, and it has a commanding view of Esquimalt into Victoria and to View Royal, and has really made a coverage improvement for that part of the world where we didn't have very great coverage under the old system, to be candid. The core is operational now, the core being the police at this point, and the fire folks are migrating over as we speak to use the new system. And the Saanich Peninsula has been given the green light by the vendor. We're doing some testing with some of the fire departments on the Saanich Peninsula, and we'll move fire departments over there next. And then it'll be the West Shore out this way, and the Gulf Islands will be the last phase towards the end of this year. And we will go operational even if we don't have some of those sites to the west, since we don't have those sites now under the current system. So we'd like to give you some gains, but right now it'll probably be similar in terms of a coverage footprint standpoint. But you will have more capacity, and you will have more better audio clarity. Chief Mount and his crew have the new radios on the portable side at this point. I'm hoping they're experiencing some improvements on the technology side, but it is on the old system, so the handheld devices are better than the old devices, so you get some improvement there. Once the new system is available, we'll get even more so. Basically, I've told you that. So basically, the input from user groups like Chief Mount and the fire department here, or the RCMP, is through 2 main subcommittees. We have a fire services committee and a police services.
Mr. Hurst, excuse me for just a moment, just because your time has run out. I would just like council to entertain a resolution to extend that. Sorry to interrupt you.
I just got about a minute.
Motion to extend by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we basically use service committees to get feedback in and out, and of course, anyone can talk to us anytime from a user group standpoint. Chief Mount is part of the fire services group, obviously, and he also serves on a subgroup looking at a pager replacement strategy. And really, that's it, except for some numbers, but you can get that in the annual report. It just shows some volumes and radios. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Sorry about the time.
No, that's totally fine. We appreciate your providing this update to us. Questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor
Yeah,
Betters.
to Mr. Horth, I don't know whether it's still pertinent, but a few years ago, the police downtown were very unhappy with the CREST system, and they were doubling up their police officers because of the inability to get signals to concrete buildings. Has that been resolved?
It has. So the new system does a better job of penetrating, buildings and going a little deeper into to subterranean sort of areas. Trying to make it straightforward, some of the challenges, though, is Victoria's densifying quite quickly. So I would say, probably put more sites in there in anticipation that that is going to continue. Right now, they're very happy. I think they gave us a thumbs up on the radio about a month ago. So the short answer is yes, it's much better.
And next question is to our fire chief. What's your experience, please, with the CREST system? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I guess we do pay you, so there you go.
Good evening, Your Worship, through the chair to Councillor Beddoes. Yeah, my experience has been good with the CREST system. As far as the technical capabilities of our staff has been excellent when it's come to troubleshooting and dealing with some problems. The new hardware that we're using on the radio side, the radios are much more robust, and they're an improvement of the radio system we had in the past. And I'm working closely with CREST right now on, as Mr. Horth said, about the pager strategy. We're just dealing with the coverage kind of issues and just some challenges on the maintenance part and warranty part of some pagers. So that's probably our biggest sort of thing looking forward in the next year, is just making sure the pager system works adequately for our department and our neighboring departments right now. But we are looking forward to improvements and better coverage, and we're doing our best to work closely with CREST as far as keeping a good, accurate database of when we come into problems. So.
Councillor St.
Thank you for that.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Through your worship to Chief Mount or our guest, I'm just curious, if the installation on Mount McGuire were to go down for whatever reason, what's the next step? What happens to communications at that point?
Thanks, Chief. So basically, the system is redundant, so in the event that there would be a catastrophic failure of a site, you are served by 3 sites, but Mount McGuire is your primary site. So you would experience, probably if Mount McGuire went down, that is your primary site, but you would get limited coverage from Helmicken and probably Rocky Point to a small degree, which is towards East Souk and out towards Machosen. So that's why we feel getting another site for you folks is essential. You really are well served by McGuire for the most part, but if we did lose McGuire, and as I say, we haven't lost a site for some time, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't plan for that. So that is definitely high in our considerations.
So go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, this is just, as I was driving over tonight, there was an incident on Wright Road here in Souk, and I had to pull the vehicle over, I think, 3 times, because the ambulance was there, 2 fire vehicles, police were following up, so the system's clearly, CREST as a fundamental piece of getting these agencies on the spot quickly. So seemingly is working extremely well. That's not a question.
Feedback? Chief Mount?
Yes, just to further answer the question, as far as redundancy and backup, we do have the amateur radio group through the emergency program, so that's another tier backup. And of course, our radios will work direct line of sight if a repeater is down. So we're not completely strapped if that Mount McGuire site would go down. And we also, through the grants this year, have acquired a satellite radio or satellite phone to help with any kind of major emergency.
Just lastly, we have had different cellular providers in as delegations, and they have said that they are willing to share their site for this particular purpose. So I guess should they luck out and receive concurrence from council, then would it be appropriate then if our staff notified CREST that this location has been sought, and then you could determine if that would be a location to pursue?
No, that's an excellent thought, Your Worship. And we do work closely with the telcos across the board. And we do two co-locates, both on our sites in terms of if they need, we will negotiate with them and vice versa. So they're usually quite happy about accommodating public safety.
Yes.
And any encouragement, and I'm sure your staff have, they've already let us know that there's some dialogue going on, and we are in discussions with two cell phone providers out in this region. So if they're successful getting a site, we would probably be negotiating a co-locate with them.
Okay, so they would be the first part, though, to land, and then CREST comes in afterwards. So obtaining that first would be the first step, so, okay.
It never hurts if they're coming before you and looking for your consent is to suggest that it would be it'd be much easier to get that consent if they consider public safety. That's always nice.
Yeah, we do have one that's looking for locations, and they did say that in chambers recently, so that's something when we do see them return, perhaps, it seems they will be at some point, but we can certainly keep that in mind. I think that's important. Okay. Anything else from members of council? Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation, and safe travels back home again.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to our next delegation tonight, and we have the ICANN Cities TPNW Physicians for Global Survival here with us tonight. And good evening, sir, and we have 5 minutes for you as well tonight on the agenda.
Sure, well, yeah, Your Worship, council members, and my name is Jonathan Down, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. And I'm here to request the support of the District of Sauk for the city's appeal by the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, otherwise known as ICANN. The city's appeal is a commitment by a municipality indicating its support for the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, otherwise known as TPNW. And it's calling for the federal government to sign and ratify this treaty without delay. As a Canadian campaigner with Physicians for Global Physicians for Global Survival, living here in the Capital Regional District, I am part of a global effort to encourage municipalities to take a stand against these inhumane and indiscriminate weapons. The TPNW is a groundbreaking international treaty which was adopted in 2017, and the Nobel Peace Prize Committee acknowledged this by providing the best pathway towards a world without nuclear weapons. And in 2017, it awarded ICANN the Nobel Peace Prize. The TPNW prohibits nations from developing, testing, producing, manufacturing, transferring, possessing, stockpiling, using, or threatening to use nuclear weapons. It prohibits states from allowing nuclear weapons to be stationed on their territory. It also prohibits them from assisting, encouraging, or inducing anyone to engage in any of these activities. It is the first international treaty which explicitly states that nuclear weapons are illegal. Due to the inaction, or rather due to the actions of a handful of irresponsible world leaders and their enablers, we are descending into a dangerous new nuclear arms race. The ongoing nuclear modernization programs of nuclear armed states and the inflammatory rhetoric of certain leaders increases the likelihood of the use of nuclear weapons, either by accident or by intent. Nuclear weapons threaten every nation's security and would cause catastrophic humanitarian consequences if they were used. The impact on civilians and the environment would be devastating. These weapons are designed to flatten cities and indiscriminately raze everything and slaughter everyone in their path. Cities are the main targets of nuclear weapons, so municipalities have a special responsibility to their constituents to speak out against any role for nuclear weapons in national security doctrines. Due to geography, cities in British Columbia are more at risk from nuclear weapons, either by design or by accident, than many other places in Canada. And here we are living in one of the most beautiful and moreover healthiest places in the world. We need to do everything that we can to protect it. Nuclear weapons serve no legitimate military or strategic purpose. This treaty, through its stigmatizing normative effect, offers the best hope of ending decades of deadlock in disarmament and moving the world towards the elimination of nuclear weapons. Municipal governments form a close and active link with their constituents and their local social movements. An international coalition of cities and civil society can therefore play a game-changing role in breaking the unacceptable status quo in nuclear weapons policy and taking a decisive step towards their elimination. Cities large and small have used the ICANN Cities Appeal as a way to encourage their governments to take action on nuclear weapons, and some have taken steps to ensure that this support comes coupled with a commitment to divest city finances from nuclear weapons production. You can learn more about ICANN Cities Appeal online, and should SUC wish to support this initiative, you can contact ICANN directly or by sending an email or contacting myself or Krista Brennan. I have some information for you. You can see these cities. The most recent is Paris, which became a city, the capital city of France, which is a nuclear weapon holding country. Likewise, Washington, D.C., similar, and Toronto. You can see some of the cities, major cities. Here in the Capital Regional District, Victoria, North Saanich, and Saanich have also adopted this particular cities appeal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation and for the link there. So perhaps what council could consider then, should you so desire, is just after you look at this, is also bring forward a notice of motion, and we could consider that at a later date.
Yeah, I have some information here for you, and I'm happy to entertain any questions if you like.
Okay, but are there questions for members of council at this time? Councillor Bateman?
Where is the nuclear clock set at the moment?
It's set at 2 minutes to midnight.
2 minutes, so it's moved a half minute
It has,
forward.
yes. I'm glad you're familiar with that, with
Yeah.
the clock. It's the closest to midnight that it's been since 1953. It's even closer than it was during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I think you and I both lived through that, and we can remember that quite clearly, as I think most members of council can remember that. Well, and so we can remember that, and so we are at 2 minutes to midnight now, and you may or not know that we are living about 50 miles north of the largest Trident nuclear submarine base in the world, actually, just on the Hood Canal. And of course, we are in a trajectory. So when I refer to the vulnerability of British Columbia, it relates to the flight path of an ICBM coming from either North Korea or from Russia, directed towards the west coast. So, yeah.
I don't remember 1953.
But you can remember 1962, maybe.
Councillor Beddoes?
I was 5 then, so that's okay. I don't remember much either, but I have lived my entire life under the threat of nuclear war. Our federal government has made some very, very strong positions on disarmament and no nuclear weapons on our soil. I'm not so sure the right approach is through the municipal governments to fight your battle. There's a lot of things go on in the world of detente. And yeah, it'd be great if everybody got rid of them. Unfortunately, you're dealing with Russia, you're dealing with the United States. And when those countries have weapons and will have weapons, they don't hear us.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you say. I just don't think at the municipal level it's something that we should be entertaining.
Yeah, it's an important point, and it's an initiative that's been taken because of the reticence of countries like Canada and Australia and other countries that don't actually possess nuclear weapons but host or participate in particular treaties such as NATO. Nuclear weapons target cities. They target civilians. They have no military basis whatsoever, no utility. And the cities appeal, as you can see, there's a major cities that have adopted the cities appeal. And I think it's sending a message to the federal government. The federal government has taken strong leadership role in the past, whether it was around landmines or cluster munitions. There's a long list of initiatives that the federal government of Canada has taken in the past, but on this file, they have stayed out of even the negotiations, so that when those negotiations were being discussed at the United Nations, they stayed away. And I'm afraid that's a reflection of the pressure that's been brought to bear by the United States government. So unfortunately, we are living under the shadow of the United States, and that's reflected in our inability to become a leader in this area.
Anything else? Councillor Bateman?
Well, as an elected representative, I agree with Councillor Beddoes that issues of this macro level seemingly are beyond the scope of municipal governments. However, as we learned at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Convention in Quebec City the other week, local governments are empowering themselves, seeking more autonomy and ability to act independently. I feel that in this moment, as an elected representative of the people of Souk, I think all right-minded people, though that's a dangerous expression, I recant that. Boy, right-minded people. I think anyone with some common sense recognizes that nuclear weapons are a threat on a scale that climate change, nuclear weapons, it's grown quiet, this whole issue. So, you know, as much as President Trump and his North Korean counterpart rattle their sabers, it's still, we've begun to take it so much for granted. So I think it doesn't hurt the District of Souk to make a motion, and I'd like to make this motion, that the District of Souk support the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and calls for the federal government to sign and ratify it without delay. And I think it's a simple thing we can do now,
Okay.
move on to the roads and
I can get a
sidewalks.
seconder.
Yeah, can I have a second?
Seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Okay, now motivate.
Well, that's about it. I've said what I need to say.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre?
I'm bilingual. I speak English and French. I've been asked by a few people since being elected to council, why did that not go federal, other than not being known at all, you know. I don't know why bilingual automatically means federal, but whatever. But the reason I generally give, instead of I would never be elected, is that the federal government doesn't necessarily seem to have a lot of power to make the changes we want to have happen. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we're affected. This is often where we can be most effective. I don't know if this will actually do any good. Quite frankly, I think we're trying to bell the cat. I tend to agree with Councillor Beddoes that it may not do anything at all. But I also agree with Councillor Bateman that why not? This is where we can try and state something important for the future. Whether or not it makes a difference, we'll see.
Can I respond to that?
We are on a motion now, so
Okay.
unfortunately, the floor is just with council.
Okay.
And while I did sort of rather cheekily say I don't remember 53 or even 63 for that matter, I have been to Hiroshima, and I have known through family there just the devastating effect that that people are still living with today. So I think that's a reasonable reality, but I'll support the motion. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I won't be supporting the motion. This is a federal matter. We have federal MPs, we elect them. It's their job. And sending a message from us, I have to agree with Councillor St. Pierre. Well, I may not agree, but I think it's token at best, and I'd rather not be dealing with these things. I understand, like I say, I lived under this cloud all my life, and I'm a firm believer what you say, but this isn't the venue to do it, and I vote against it.
Okay. Can I call the question, Councillor Bateman?
Well, and I'll be
Final
voting in
question?
favor, of course, having made the motion. The City of Toronto, among other Canadian municipalities and cities, have signed this. 1,700 cities in Japan have signed this, 18 in Australia. It's a worldwide thing. So I think, again, municipal governments have a voice. We, the people, the 13,000 people of Souk, as much as we're not speaking for all of them, we are just sending a message that we can decision.
Thank you. Final? Right. So anyway, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Bettles is opposed. It carries. Okay. And moving on. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Down, and we'll keep you apprised. Okay, so we're moving on into our next section, which is our public question and comment period here. So this is for members of the public that are gathered here. We have, if you could let us, please join us at the microphone as you so wish. And there's 2 minutes.
Sorry, just to remind members of the public that if they wish to speak to the annual report, there will be a specific opportunity to speak to that after the public question and comment period.
Okay, I didn't see that. I didn't mention that because I didn't see that on here. So how about any item except for the annual report, because the annual report has its own input section. And we just need your name, where you live, and if you could fill out the sheet so we spell your name properly. And don't need to rush the microphone. So, but the annual report will have its own section. Were you speaking, Mr. Dow? No, just, okay.
I'm just being a good boy.
Okay. Okay, so then we'll just move into the next section then and carry on, seeing that there's no members of the public for that portion. So next, under item 9, is our 2018 annual report. And that is here for council to consider approval. So I'll turn it over to staff to introduce the item, and then we'll see if there's any, and then we'll open it up to members of the public then. Just say that on the, hold on, something's frozen here, that the link on the electronic agenda says 2016. This is frozen now, just a second. Anyway, I'll turn it to staff while I.
So in accordance with the legislation, the municipality is required to provide an annual report prior to June 30th each year. And that is a combination of our audited financial statements as well as just general information and statistics for all of our various departments. And that's what's presented here for council's consideration this evening. I don't have anything specifically prepared to review with respect to the department statistics, but if there are any specific questions, be happy to entertain them.
Questions or comments from members of council?
Well,
Councillor Bateman?
apart from well done, that bravo, this, I've always loved these reports over the years, and it's just remarkable the things that undertakes in.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to staff.
Questions? Councillor Dose?
I just want to echo that from Councillor Bateman. Very well done. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. I would like a printed copy once we've adopted, please. In color, please. Do it if you've already. Just revisions. Okay, so I'll turn it to members of the public that are here tonight to speak on the annual report.
I just want to pour a glass first, if I may.
things like population. I know sometimes.
Well, that's correct, Your Worship. I mean, there are options that might very well be considered. It was mentioned, it was made clear to us that red brick pavers were or red stamped contract, or red stamped concrete, just to look at the last two of the three, would carry along to a certain point along the highway, and if council wishes to extend the option, or if they wish to provide different surfacing, then we can do that and get back to you. The issue is that some of these things will be potentially ironed out with the MOTI and with the contractors over time. So if there's a desire to have stamped concrete on both sides of the road past Ed McGregor Park, we can do that. There'll be an additional cost.
Councillor St. Pierre?
When I was looking at the options that were presented, I didn't actually see what I guess I was hoping for. I see red stamped concrete on both sides. I see, sorry, it's the third one. Red brick with reduced scope, which does not include a concrete option, and partial red brick on north side and all concrete on south side. But I think that what had been, what we were hoping for, I think, as council, was to see a partial brick with a possibility of stamped concrete. So not necessarily the first option, which was red brick everywhere, but having something that will be decorative all the way along, but still reduce costs and allow us to have more sidewalk. So that's not actually one of the three options that's presented. The other thing that I was thinking about was that there's a $50,000 cost on the EV infrastructure for the conduit. I don't actually know enough about EV, although I'm very interested, obviously, know whether or not that particular corridor is likely to require EV infrastructure. But it's on, a major thoroughfare. It's on the highway. I would think that EV infrastructure would be a good thing to have. And it seems like $50K is actually a relatively small cost compared to what it might cost later on to dig up the road and put it in. So I'm curious about getting a bit more information about that in terms of what it might cost in the future and what the likelihood of us wanting to put in that infrastructure would be. Finally, when I was at FCM, I ran across a company that that does something called hydro pavers, which are essentially water permeable pavers made from ceramic tiles that are actually stronger than concrete and use recycled ceramics. We don't have the same carbon footprint concrete, at the same time being considerably stronger than concrete, and potentially come with a $350,000 matching grant from FCM as a green initiative. And that could actually allow us to extend our sidewalks further, could actually make use of that and have a look at that.
Councillor Beddoes?
I must have been at a different meeting or something, because what I do recall is that basically we were just looking at pavers, approach to brushed concrete, and then a third option came out of pressed concrete. That's, I thought, where it ended. I've done a little bit of research on this. I phoned some seniors organizations. I phoned some disability organizations. And I happened to luck in where one of them gave me a consultant that they use about all of these sidewalks for people with disabilities. And it was quite good, and I went and checked, and I made some photographs too, which I sent in, of different things. The first one on your left is, of course, by a driveway. This is in Langford. Those are my shoes, by the way. And they do damage quite easily, those bricks. And then the other one, this again is in Langford, those paving stones like that, they do separate, which is more of a hazard to people with high heels. But basically, and there's one of the pressed surfaces that are into concrete. That was in Renton, Washington, where I was there on Saturday. But what he said is the smoother the surface, the better. And actually, pavers are very good for the first number of years. The problem with the pavers over brushed concrete is the pavers tend to wave, and they also tend, like those other problems where they separate. So, and they say that the worst thing is to have of those lines. And actually, my wife broke her foot the other day, and we now have one of these little scooters you put your knee on. And we were testing some of these surfaces today. And it is quite annoying if you go over anything other than brushed concrete. I don't, I like the look of pavers, but I think I have a lot of problems with two. One is I don't think they're ideal for people with handicaps. And the other is putting pavers in, we cannot put as much concrete in. And I heard from the public many times over that they want us to get on with putting some sidewalks in. And I think we need to go distance rather than aesthetics. So,
Can I just ask you a clarifying
Sure.
question? When you say pressed concrete, that's the same as stamped concrete?
Correct.
Okay.
now the difference at pressed, and we got the third one is that pressed one. It depends on how heavily they press. They're in Langford, they have some pressed concrete in the center mediums where the trucks drive over. And it is very, they're about pressed in a good half-inch. And you would never push a cart. And when I was in Yakima the other day, I had my cart with my baggage on it, and I tried to go across some of that pressed concrete stamped or whatever you want to call it, and it was, and it just about shook my teeth out. So I thought it was a wonderful idea to explore, but I think in practicality, I don't think it's an option for us. I thank Councillor St. Pierre bringing that forward because it piqued my interest in it, because I thought this was a pretty neat way to go forward, but it's not practical. The hardest thing for people with handicaps are those damn big lines in between, but they're every 5 feet in brushed concrete, so it's not that brushed concrete, it's perfectly meets. But anyways, I weighed all these things together, and I had some other pictures I didn't get a chance to email in, but I think the brushed concrete is the way to go. We get more sidewalk for our dollar. And just as a side note, when I was 6 years old or 8 years old, walkway put in front of my house. And it's still there with my initials in it, by the way. And it still looks good. And that's when I'm 71, so you can do the math how long that concrete walk's been there. So anyways, here's my 2 bits.
So it sounds like you're in favor with option 2, partial red brick on the north and concrete all on the south as shown previously.
No, I'm in favor of brushed concrete the whole way.
Oh, so an option 4.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is.
There's that's not on here as an option, it's just brushed concrete. Okay. Other thoughts from, I'm kind of keen on number 3 because we have the same, we get it more mileage. It keeps the look that we had outlined in our town center design guidelines and what we've been pushing everyone to, and the sidewalk and the like. That's number 3. Number 1 is brick on both sides. South. Entirely, if you were to throw it forward. Councillor St.
This is probably a bit of a fantasy, but at the same time, I've seen some beautiful work done with concrete. The artwork in the park.
grateful